The unease started as a whisper in my gut, barely noticeable at first. Like when you sense someone watching you from across a room but can't quite catch them in the act. I'm Ophelia Rivers, 29 years old, and I've been working at Crestwood Industries for almost 4 years now. Customer support specialist, Tier 2, handling complaints about defective electronics while maintaining a smile through my voice even when people screamed at me about their broken tablets and malfunctioning speakers. The salary wasn't impressive, just enough to cover rent in my studio apartment and keep food in the refrigerator. But in this economy, having any job felt like winning a small lottery. My manager's name was Chase Donovan, and she ran our floor like a prison warden who smiled while tightening the chains. That Monday morning in late February, Chase assembled all 15 of us by the coffee station. Her posture was rigid, shoulders squared like she was preparing for battle rather than addressing her own team. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across her angular face. "I've been analyzing our department's output," she announced, her voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment mixed with authority. "Every single person here is losing approximately 2.5 hours of productive time daily. Starting next week, we're implementing a comprehensive monitoring solution." She paused, letting the words sink in like stones dropping into still water. "Bathroom visits, break duration, personal device usage, conversation time. Everything gets tracked and measured. This is about accountability, about helping you become better versions of yourselves." I glanced around at my colleagues. Dimitri had 3 children and a husband recovering from a workplace accident. Nora was supporting her elderly mother while working here and doing weekend shifts at a retail store. We weren't wasting time. We were trying to survive in a world that demanded everything and gave back barely enough. Nobody protested. What would be the point? Jobs were scarce that season. Every week I heard about another business shutting down, another round of layoffs, another person I knew joining the unemployment line. My shift ran from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. 8 hours of listening to frustrated customers explain how their brand new laptop crashed or their wireless headphones refused to connect. I didn't blame them for their anger. Technology failing at the worst possible moment would make anyone irritable. The following Monday arrived with the installation crew. Chase supervised personally as technicians mounted devices throughout our workspace. I counted them during my lunch break. 94 separate units. They positioned them above workstations near the kitchen area, along the corridor to the restrooms, even by the small meditation room we were allowed to use for 15 minutes daily. "These will monitor workflow efficiency," Chase explained during our afternoon meeting. "Response times, typing speed, call resolution rates. This is how modern companies operate. You'll see improvements within the first month." My full name is Ophelia Catherine Rivers. I dropped out of university after 2 years when my father got diagnosed with cancer and someone needed to help manage the medical bills. I'm not extraordinary. I don't have influential connections or specialized credentials. I simply show up and complete my assigned tasks. But I pay attention. Always have. When I was younger, my father used to joke that I could spot a counterfeit bill from 20 feet away. He meant it affectionately, but he wasn't wrong. Details register with me in ways they don't for most people. The first 6 weeks felt strange but tolerable. We adapted our behavior, calculated our break times more carefully, consumed meals faster, eliminated casual conversations between calls. Chase would patrol the floor with her tablet, examining whatever data streams she was accessing, nodding to herself like a professor grading examinations in real time. Then around week 7 I started noticing changes in her patterns. She would open her tablet during work hours and stare, not briefly but for extended periods, 12 minutes, 18 minutes, sometimes longer. Her facial expressions would shift depending on what she observed. Sometimes her jaw would tighten. Sometimes she would zoom into something on the display. That wasn't someone reviewing productivity metrics. That was someone watching something entirely different. One afternoon in April, Chase walked past my station while I was wrapping up a call with a customer whose tablet kept freezing. Her tablet was angled just enough that I caught a glimpse of the screen. She wasn't viewing our workstations. She was watching the small changing room near the back entrance. Just a tiny space with a mirror where 4 of us would adjust our clothing after lunch if we spilled something or needed to fix our appearance. My chest tightened. I finished the call mechanically, my mind trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Maybe I misinterpreted. Maybe it was a different camera feed. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But the image wouldn't leave my thoughts. That night I lay awake until dawn replaying that brief glimpse of her screen. The angle, the location, it was definitely the changing room. The next morning I began paying closer attention, genuinely paying attention. Watching when Chase watched, noting the times she seemed most absorbed in her tablet. I couldn't see her display from my workstation, but I could observe her face. The way she would press her lips together when concentrating. How she would shift her position to view more comfortably during longer sessions. During my break I walked around our floor pretending to stretch my legs. I recounted the monitoring devices. 94 exactly as announced. But their positioning seemed questionable now that I examined them with fresh awareness. Sure, some pointed toward workstations, but others were aimed at the small break room where people heated their instant meals. At the meditation space where people went to take medications privately. At the supply closet where you could make personal calls because it was the only location without ambient noise from everyone's conversations. Why would productivity monitoring require views of those spaces? Nausea rolled through my stomach. But I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Chase had been with Crestwood Industries for 11 years. She had a reputation as a results-driven leader. I was just a support specialist who never finished her degree. If I accused her of something this severe without evidence, I'd be the one escorted out by security. So I stayed silent. I watched her watch us. I started documenting observations at home on my personal laptop. Never at work, always at home. I would return to my apartment and record what I'd noticed. The time she seemed most focused, which direction her tablet faced, how long she remained on particular feeds. May arrived, then June. The heat made our workspace unbearable because the air conditioning system barely functioned. Everyone was exhausted. Dimitri's husband required another surgery. Nora's second job reduced her hours. A new employee named Felix joined our team and resigned after 11 days. Too stressful, he said when he left. But I suspected he sensed something wrong about how Chase observed us. Most people couldn't articulate it. They just felt uncomfortable, violated in ways they couldn't name. I continued documenting. The pattern was crystallizing. Chase checked specific feeds more frequently than others. The changing room. The meditation space. The break room when someone was alone. She barely glanced at our actual work areas anymore. This wasn't about productivity. This had never been about improving our performance. 5 months in, I had sufficient observations to confirm I wasn't imagining things. But observations weren't proof. I needed something concrete, something undeniable that would force people to believe me. The opportunity materialized in early July. I was working late on a Tuesday because we were understaffed. Chase had left for a meeting on the 6th floor. She forgot to lock her tablet, just left it sitting there on the counter near the supply cabinet, screen still active. I knew I had maybe 4 minutes before she returned. My hands trembled so violently I could barely coordinate my movements. This was my chance. But if someone caught me, I was finished. Not just terminated. Possibly charged with unauthorized access to company devices. I looked around. Everyone else had already left. Just me on the floor. I could hear my pulse hammering in my ears. The building felt unnaturally quiet. I approached her tablet. The screen showed exactly what I suspected. Multiple camera feeds, and she'd been watching the meditation room. The timestamp indicated she'd been on that feed for 21 minutes. 21 minutes of watching someone in a private medical moment. I pulled out my phone and started capturing what I needed. Not photographs, something more substantial. Evidence that would show her login credentials, the timestamps, the feeds she accessed most frequently. My hands refused to stop shaking. I kept glancing toward the entrance, expecting her to appear any second. 3 minutes passed. I got what I needed and returned to my workstation just as I heard her footsteps in the corridor. She walked in, retrieved her tablet, and departed without acknowledging me. I sat there attempting to breathe normally, attempting to appear like nothing significant had happened. But everything significant had happened. I finally possessed what I needed. Before I continue, thank you for listening to this. I know this sounds improbable. I know it sounds like something that couldn't happen in reality, but it did happen. It happened to me and 14 other people who just wanted to work and pay our expenses. If you're listening from somewhere right now, I want you to know this story is for everyone who has ever felt monitored, ever felt violated, ever felt powerless against those who abuse their authority. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. It helps me know I'm not alone in this, that we're not alone in this. Now back to the story. The next 4 weeks were the most difficult of my life. I possessed the evidence, but what was I supposed to do with it? Approaching human resources felt pointless. They would inform Chase. She would delete everything and I would be terminated for making unsubstantiated accusations. Going to external authorities felt equally impossible. What law had she violated? I didn't know. I wasn't a legal expert. So I waited. I planned. I kept watching her watch us, knowing what she was really doing, feeling more disgusted every single day. Then August arrived, bringing with it the annual board presentation. Every year Crestwood Industries held this major presentation where department heads showcased their results to the board. 18 senior leaders would fly in from various regions. It was treated like an enormous event. People prepared for weeks. Chase had been discussing it since June, how she was going to present her monitoring initiative, how the data proved her system worked, how she was going to demonstrate the return on investment. She practiced her presentation during our lunch periods, made us sit there and watch her slides while we tried to eat. Graphs showing reduced break times. Charts showing increased call completion rates. Data showing we spent less time away from our workstations. This is going to transform how the entire company operates, she told us one afternoon. Other departments will adopt this. I might even get promoted to regional director. He was proud. Genuinely proud of what she'd built. That made it worse somehow. The presentation was scheduled for August 11th, a Thursday. They reserved the large conference center on the ground level, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the projection system that cost more than I earned in 18 months. I requested that day off 3 weeks in advance. Told them I had a medical appointment. They approved it without question. Then 5 days before the presentation, I sent an email to the executive coordinator who organized the board meeting. Said I was a customer support specialist who had insights about the monitoring system that the board might find valuable. Asked if I could attend as an observer. She replied within 2 hours. Said observers weren't typically permitted, but given the topic relevance she would add me to the attendance list. Just sit in the back and remain quiet. I could barely eat for those 5 days. Barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, what could go catastrophically wrong. Everything could go catastrophically wrong. Wednesday night I didn't sleep at all. Just lay there staring at my ceiling thinking about Dimitri's children. About Nora working herself toward collapse. About Felix who quit after 11 days because he sensed something was wrong. About every person who had used the meditation room or the changing area or the break room, not knowing they were being watched like specimens under a microscope. Thursday morning I put on the most professional outfit I owned. A gray blazer and black slacks. Nothing fancy. I looked like I was attending a funeral. Maybe I was. Maybe this was the funeral for my employment, my income, my ability to pay rent. I arrived at the building at 8:15. The presentation wasn't until 9:30, but I needed to be there early, needed to settle my anxiety. The conference center was already filling up. 18 board members in their expensive suits, department heads from different regions, some assistants, the executive team, and Chase standing near the front organizing her materials, checking her tablet. She looked confident. Comfortable. Like someone about to receive recognition. She noticed me walk in. Her expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "What are you doing here?" she asked, approaching where I stood near the back. "I was invited," I said quietly. "As an observer." "Observers weren't approved for this." "Check with Maisie," I said, naming the executive coordinator. She added me to the list. Chase looked like she wanted to argue, but people were taking their seats. She couldn't create a disturbance. Not now. Not in front of the board. She returned to the front but kept glancing at me. Suspicious. The presentation started at 9:35, 5 minutes late because one of the board members encountered traffic. The chief executive opened with some remarks about company performance, then introduced the agenda. For presentations from different departments. Chase was third. I sat through the first 2 presentations barely hearing anything. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought people around me could hear it. My palms were damp with sweat. I had my phone in my pocket with everything I needed already loaded, ready to deploy. But I kept thinking about withdrawing, just leaving, pretending I never witnessed anything. Then Chase was introduced. She walked to the front, connected her tablet to the projection system. Her first slide appeared on the massive screen behind her. Productivity enhancement through comprehensive monitoring. She talked for 14 minutes. Showed her graphs, her charts, her data. The board members were nodding, taking notes. One asked about implementation costs. Another asked about employee resistance. Chase answered smoothly, confidently. The initial resistance was minimal, she said. Once staff understood this was about helping them improve, most welcomed it. That was a fabrication. Nobody had welcomed it. We had tolerated it because we needed our salaries. She continued. Showed more slides, more numbers. Talked about expanding the system, about implementing it in other departments, about making it company-wide. Any questions? She asked, looking at the board members. A few hands rose. Standard questions about technical specifications, about data storage, about privacy compliance. Chase answered each one, still confident, still comfortable. Then she asked again, any other questions? I raised my hand. She saw me. Her expression hardened. She clearly didn't want to acknowledge me, but the chief executive had noticed my hand too. Yes, he said, looking at me. You have a question? I stood up. My legs felt unstable. I have something that reveals the real impact of this monitoring system. The room shifted. People turned to look at me. Chase's face went pale. I'm sorry, she said quickly. But this is a board presentation. Observers aren't permitted to. Let her speak, the chief executive interrupted. He looked curious now. You said you have something to show us? I nodded, pulled out my phone, walked toward the front. Each step felt like walking through concrete. Chase was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear combined with rage. This will just take 14 seconds, I said. I connected my phone to the projection system, the same system Chase had just used for her presentation. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the connector twice. But I got it. The massive screen behind me switched from Chase's slides to what I'd captured. 14 seconds of her tablet activity. The timestamp in the corner showing the date and time. Her login credentials visible at the top. And the feed she was watching. The meditation room. Someone clearly in a private medical moment. The zoom function showing she'd enlarged the view. The duration counter showing she'd been watching for 21 minutes. 14 seconds. That was all it took. The room went completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It felt like the oxygen had been extracted from the space. Then the chief executive stood up. What is this? Chase tried to speak. Her mouth opened but nothing emerged. She looked at the screen, at the board members, at me, back to the screen. That's not, she started. I wasn't. That's your login credentials, I said quietly. My voice was shaking but clear. That's your access. That's what you were watching. Not productivity metrics. Not work performance. That. For 21 minutes. One of the board members, an older woman named Constance, stood up. She looked furious. How many of these devices were positioned in private areas? I looked at her. Multiple. The changing room. The meditation space. The break room. The supply closet. Places where people went because they thought they had privacy. Another board member stood, then another. They were all looking at Chase now. She'd backed up against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. This is a misunderstanding, she said. Her voice had gone high and thin. Those feeds were part of the comprehensive monitoring. I was just checking. For 21 minutes? Constance interrupted. You were checking for 21 minutes? Chase had no answer. What answer could there be? The chief executive looked at someone near the entrance. Get legal immediately. And security. The next 90 minutes happened in fragments. Security arrived. Chase was escorted out, not gently. The board went into a closed session. I was asked to wait outside. Someone brought me water. I couldn't drink it. My hands were still shaking too badly. Maisie, the executive coordinator, sat with me. She didn't say much. Just sat there. At one point she said, "You were very courageous." I didn't feel courageous. I felt like I might vomit. At 12:15 I was called back in. Just the chief executive and Constance. They asked me questions for 30 minutes. How long had I noticed this behavior? Had I told anyone? Did I have other evidence? Had Chase ever said anything inappropriate? I answered everything honestly. Showed them the notes I'd kept at home, the observations, the patterns. When I finished, Constance looked at the chief executive. We need to contact everyone on that floor. Inform them immediately. Legal exposure is substantial. He nodded, then looked at me. Chase has been terminated. Effective immediately. We're launching a full investigation. Every device will be removed by close of business today. I just nodded. Couldn't form words. You should know, Constance added, that 4 of your colleagues have already contacted legal counsel. This is going to be complicated. They dismissed me at 1 o'clock. I walked out of that building into the August afternoon and just stood there on the sidewalk. People walked past me. Traffic moved. The world continued like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. I went home, sat on my couch, stared at nothing. At 3:30 my phone rang. It was Nora from work. Ophelia, she said. Her voice was crying. They just told us. They told us everything. About Chase. About what she was doing. About you. I'm sorry, I said. Didn't know why I was apologizing. Sorry? Ophelia, you stopped her. You actually stopped her. We talked for 90 minutes. Then Dimitri called, then others. Everyone from our floor. Some crying, some angry, some just silent on the other end of the line, processing. By evening, I learned that Chase hadn't just been terminated. An investigation had been launched. Legal authorities were involved. The company had hired an external firm to examine everything. Every feed, every timestamp, every access log. Within 72 hours, every single monitoring device was gone. All 94 of them removed like they'd never existed. The company sent out a formal apology to our entire department, offered counseling services, revised their monitoring policies company-wide. 4 of my colleagues filed lawsuits. I understood why. What Chase had done wasn't just wrong. It was a violation that couldn't be repaired with apologies or policy changes. I didn't file a lawsuit. Some people asked me why. My answer was simple. I didn't want to spend the next 3 years reliving this in depositions and courtrooms. I wanted to move forward. That was my choice. Others made different choices. Both were valid. September brought changes I wasn't expecting. The chief executive called me into his office. Not the conference center, his actual office on the 9th floor. I'd never been up there before. It smelled like expensive coffee and leather furniture that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Sit down, Ophelia, he said. He was older, maybe late 50s, with silver hair and tired eyes. I want to talk about what happens next. I sat. Waited. My stomach was tight. First, I want to apologize, he said. Not on behalf of the company. Personally, for me. What happened to you and your colleagues should never have occurred. We failed in our oversight. We trusted the wrong person. That failure is on leadership. It's on me. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Second, I want you to know that Chase will face consequences beyond termination. The investigation has uncovered evidence that what she did may constitute criminal violations. That's being handled by authorities now. I nodded slowly. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt nothing. I was so exhausted. Third, he continued, we need to fill the floor supervisor position for your department. We want to promote from within. Someone who understands what that team has been through. Someone they trust. He was looking at me. Really looking at me. You want me to be the supervisor? I asked. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I want you to consider it. You showed courage, integrity, leadership when it mattered most. Those aren't common qualities. I thought about it for maybe 7 seconds. Then I said, no. He looked surprised. No, I repeated. I appreciate it. I really do. But I don't want to be anyone's supervisor. I don't want that kind of power over people. Not after what I witnessed someone do with it. He leaned back in his chair, studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I understand. That's fair. But I want to offer you something else then. A position in our ethics and compliance department. We're building out that team. We need people who understand what happens when systems fail, when oversight fails. People who will speak up. Would you consider that? That felt different. Better. Can I think about it? Take your time, he said. The offer stays open. I left his office feeling strange, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. This wasn't supposed to happen to people like me. I was supposed to just keep my head down and survive. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. But things had changed. I had changed. October came cold and overcast. 4 months since the board presentation. The lawsuits were moving forward. The company had settled with 2 colleagues already. The terms were confidential, but word circulated that they were substantial. Substantial enough that both quit and relocated to different cities. Started over somewhere new. I stayed. Kept working customer support, answering calls about defective electronics. But something was different now. People treated me differently. Some with respect, some with suspicion, like I was someone who couldn't be trusted with secrets anymore. Nora was one of the few who stayed normal around me. We had lunch together most days. She'd quit her second job. Finally could afford to now. The company had given our entire department raises. Guilt money, she called it. But money was money. You ever regret it? She asked me one afternoon in late October. We were eating sandwiches from the place across the street, the cheap place with the good bread. Regret what? I asked. Speaking up. Doing what you did. Your life would be simpler if you just stayed quiet. I thought about that. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't regret it. My life would be simpler, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Does that make sense? She nodded. Yeah, it does. November arrived. The holidays were approaching. The building was decorated with lights and artificial snow that was supposed to look cheerful but mostly just looked depressing. People were planning gatherings and time off, discussing family visits and travel. I was planning something else. I'd made my decision about the job offer. On November 7th, I accepted the position in ethics and compliance. Started in January. Different floor, different responsibilities, same building. When I told my team during our last shift together before I transitioned, they were happy for me. Most of them. A few seemed hurt that I was leaving. Dimitri looked like he might cry. You're going to do good things there, he said. Make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. I'm going to try, I said. My last day in customer support was November 30th. People brought in snacks. Someone made a small cake. It was nice. Awkward but nice. Nora pulled me aside near the end of the shift. You know what you did was insane, right? She said. Like genuinely insane. You risked everything. I know, I said. But I'm glad you did it. We all are. Even the people who act weird around you now, they're glad. They just don't know how to express it. We hugged. She smelled like vanilla lotion and instant coffee. Smelled like the last 4 years of my life. December brought the new position. New desk on the 5th floor. New responsibilities. I was part of a team that reviewed company policies, investigated complaints, made recommendations to leadership about ethical practices. It was challenging work. Harder than I expected. Not physically, mentally, emotionally. I sat in meetings where people discussed risk management and liability exposure and legal frameworks. Sometimes I wanted to scream that they were talking about human beings. People with lives. People who trusted their employers not to violate them. But I didn't scream. I learned the language. Learned how to translate my anger and my experience into terms that made executives listen. Learned that changing systems required patience and strategy and persistence. January brought news that Chase had been charged. Multiple criminal counts related to privacy violations. The trial was scheduled for July. I would probably have to testify. My attorney said to prepare for that. I was preparing. February brought spring. Warmer days. Longer light. The building felt different somehow. Or maybe I felt different. I was sleeping better, eating better. Had started going to counseling. The company paid for it. Least they could do. My counselor was helpful. Patient. Never pushed. One afternoon in late February, I was working at my desk when I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Thank you from someone at the Northern Branch." I opened it. Hi Ophelia. My name is Lydia. I work in customer support at the Northern Regional Office. I heard about what you did. About what happened with your manager. I just wanted you to know that it mattered. Our management was planning to implement a similar monitoring system here. After what happened at your location, they canceled it. You probably saved a lot of people from going through what you went through. I know you don't know me, but thank you. Really, thank you. I read that email 4 times. Then saved it in a folder I created called Reasons. March brought more emails. More messages from people across the company. People I'd never met. Thanking me. Telling me their own stories about times they stayed quiet. Times they wished they'd spoken up. Times they were glad someone else had. I answered every single one. It took hours. But it felt important. April brought the 1-year mark since I first noticed what Chase was really doing with those feeds. 1 year since my stomach first turned when I glimpsed her tablet. 1 year since I started documenting at home. I didn't celebrate. Didn't mark it in any special way. Just noted it. Acknowledged it. Moved forward. May brought a company-wide policy change. New guidelines about workplace monitoring. New oversight requirements. New protections for employees. I'd worked on those policies. My input was all over them. Not just mine. The whole ethics team. But I'd contributed. That meant something. June brought preparation for the trial. Meeting with prosecutors. Reviewing evidence. Going over testimony. It was exhausting. But necessary. July brought the trial itself. 6 days of sitting in a courtroom. Listening to technical testimony about feeds and access logs and timestamps. Listening to my colleagues describe how they felt when they learned they'd been watched. How violated. How angry. How betrayed. I testified on day 4. Answered questions for 3 hours. The defense attorney tried to make me seem vindictive. Like I had a personal grudge against Chase. Like I wanted attention. But the evidence was clear. The timestamps were clear. What she'd done was undeniable. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Found her guilty on multiple counts. Sentencing was scheduled for September. I didn't feel victorious when the verdict was read. I felt tired. Just deeply, completely tired. August brought distance. Time to breathe. Time to process. I took 2 weeks off work. Went to visit my father. He was doing better. Had been in remission for 3 years now. We sat on his back porch and drank tea and didn't talk about work or trials or any of it. Just sat together. "You did good," he said one evening. "I'm proud of you." That was enough. September brought the sentencing. Chase got 22 months plus fines plus probation after release. It wasn't enough for some people. It was too much for others. For me it was what it was. Justice is complicated. Imperfect. But it was something. Now it's December again. A full year and 4 months since the board presentation. Since I stood up in that conference center and showed 14 seconds that changed everything. People still ask me if it was worth it. If I would do it again. My answer is always the same. Yes. Because staying silent would have destroyed something in me. Some part of myself I couldn't get back. I still work in ethics and compliance. Still answer emails from employees with concerns. Still sit in meetings and push for better policies. It's not glamorous work. Nobody writes news stories about policy revisions or oversight committees. But it matters. The people from my old team are doing okay. Most of them. Dimitri's husband is healthy now. Nora bought a small house. Others moved on to different jobs, different lives. We still message sometimes. Check in. Life isn't perfect now. I still have difficult days. Still wake up sometimes thinking about those 5 months I watched Chase watch us. Still get angry about what she did. What she stole from people who just wanted to work and pay their bills and be left alone. But I sleep better now. I look at myself differently in the mirror. I know what I'm capable of. Not just capable of enduring. Capable of fighting back. Of speaking up. Of being brave when bravery was required. That knowledge changed me. Made me someone I didn't know I could be. And if I could go back to that Monday in February when Chase first announced the monitoring system, knowing everything that would happen, all the fear and risk and exhaustion and pain, would I still choose to speak up? Yes. Every single time. Yes. Thank you for listening to my story all the way to the end. I know it was long. I know it was heavy. But these stories matter. The ones where ordinary people face impossible situations and find the courage to do what's right. If this story connected with you, if it reminded you of your own moments of courage or times you wished you'd spoken up, leave a comment below. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Real stories. True stories about people who refuse to stay silent. Because that's how we change things. One voice at a time. One person willing to stand up. One 14-second clip that exposes the truth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're braver than you think you are.